If you asked anyone at my family's dinner table growing up who was most likely to succeed, they would have pointed to my sister Kayla. Confidently, unanimously, and without hesitation. Kayla was polished from day one. High school valedictorian, marketing degree with honors, 2 internships before she even graduated, and the type of girl who never chipped a nail or forgot to smile for photos. My parents, Nancy and Robert, practically branded her with their approval. They framed her diplomas, plastered her achievements on Facebook, and once mailed out a newsletter with her engagement photo on the cover. A literal newsletter. And me? I was the family ghost. Present but never seen. I wasn't a failure, not in the traditional sense. I held a part-time waitressing job while taking night classes in digital design. I had notebooks full of sketches, startup ideas, app mock-ups, and dream budgets. But dreams weren't real currency in our household. Practicality was. Corporate ladders. 401ks, appearances. You're too smart to just be a waitress, my dad would say, not as encouragement, but as judgment. You need structure. My mom chimed in once, watching me sketch wireframes on the back of a placemat. You'll burn out chasing all these ideas.
Kayla didn't comment.
She just smiled in that perfect, sympathetic way that made me feel smaller. I was 23 when I showed my family the first version of what would eventually become Freelance Flow, a mobile app designed to help creatives and contractors manage their clients, deadlines, and invoices without getting overwhelmed. It was clunky, coded by me with trial-and-error tutorials and barely functional. But it was mine. At dinner, I pulled it up on my phone, showed them a rough prototype, excited. My dad squinted. So it's like an invoice tracker? Sort of, I replied. But smarter. It tracks workflow, payments, auto-reminders, contract templates, scheduling tools. He waved me off. Well, don't quit your night job. My mom chuckled. Maybe Kayla could help you make a presentation. She's great with branding. Kayla, fork poised midair, smiled and said, It's cute. You just have to make sure it doesn't look amateur. I nodded, cheeks burning. Folded my phone away like a bad report card. Later that night, my mom pulled me aside and handed me an envelope, $3,000. For your car, she said. You've been talking about that rattle in the engine. I wanted to believe it was support, but it was pity. A way to feel helpful without having to understand me. I took it, repaired the car. Then used the leftover to pay a part-time developer overseas to help rebuild the app properly. That was the first time I chose myself over their voices. I moved out 3 months later. Not in anger, just in silence. I found a basement apartment in a nearby city, picked up a barista gig during the day, and spent my nights refining the app. I didn't tell them when I launched the beta. Didn't mention when it hit 1,000 downloads. Didn't ask for their help. What they called irresponsible was starting to look a lot like traction. But I wasn't done yet. At 25, I pitched Freelance Flow to 3 angel investors at a local startup event.
They passed.
One told me to find a co-founder who looked more technical. Another said the market was too niche. I went home, cried for an hour, then revised my pitch deck. By 26, I had 10,000 active users and a subscription model that was finally generating consistent income. I paid off the original developer, hired a back-end engineer from Canada, and started writing blog posts that circulated across LinkedIn. Still, I told no one in my family. Every major milestone, I kept to myself. Then it happened. A business journalist I followed reached out after finding one of my posts. She interviewed me for a small but respected online publication. The headline read, From Side Hustle to SaaS, How This Waitress Built a Tool for Creatives the Industry Couldn't Ignore. It went modestly viral. My user base doubled in a week. New subscribers poured in. It was the first time I thought I might actually make it, but success is a funny thing. It doesn't always heal what it should. I still found myself checking their Facebook pages. Seeing photos of Kayla's engagement party, graduation celebration, brunches I wasn't invited to. My name never mentioned. No one had asked where I'd gone. No one seemed to care. It wasn't anger I felt, it was detachment. The dull ache of realizing you'd already been forgotten before you even left. And yet, a seed of satisfaction was growing. Not out of spite, but out of becoming. By the time I was 28, Freelance Flow had crossed 100,000 users. We were onboarding partners. I hired a small team. I stopped working the cafe job and upgraded to a quiet loft with high ceilings and a balcony. I still didn't post on social media. I still kept my number unlisted. Until one day, my cousin texted me out of the blue. "Holy shit, you're on Forbes?" That's when it all blew up. The morning the Forbes article dropped, I was at my favorite cafe, sipping cold brew and editing a product launch email when I felt my phone buzz nonstop. First it was Maya, my old college roommate.
Girl.
"You didn't tell me you were a Forbes-featured CEO. What?" Then 2 former coworkers. Then 3 LinkedIn connection requests. Then 20. By 10 a.m., the article had been shared over 4,000 times. Title: Waitress turned tech founder empowers freelancers with game-changing app. The piece was generous and honest. It didn't glamorize the struggle. It mentioned that I bootstrapped my way through late shifts, coded through exhaustion, launched with no funding. That I refused to take investor money until I knew exactly what my product stood for. It even mentioned the name of the cafe I had worked at for 3 years. I should have been overjoyed. And I was. But underneath that joy was something else, a sense of dread. Like I had lit a fuse I didn't know was connected to a whole room of explosives. Because now my family would know. And they did. At 12:22 p.m., my mom sent a message. Not a call. Not even a proper greeting. Saw the article. "You couldn't even tell us?" At 12:34, another from my dad. "Glad you're doing well. Surprised you kept it from us. That's disappointing."
Disappointing.
I laughed out loud, sitting there at my laptop, as if the past 5 years had been nothing more than some elaborate prank. Then Kayla chimed in. "Saw your article. Guess you were serious about that app thing after all.
Congrats.
Maybe we can all catch up sometime, like it was a missed coffee date. Like we hadn't gone almost 3 years without speaking."
I didn't reply. Not to any of them.
Instead, I went home, closed the blinds, and opened a bottle of wine. For the first time in months, I felt like a storm was forming, not around my work, but around me. 2 days later, it escalated. I received an email from a law office. The name wasn't familiar. The subject line: Notice of Financial Interest Claim, Freelance Flow Technologies. At first, I thought it was spam. But the body made it clear. My parents were pursuing legal action. They claimed I had used family funds to start the business, and as such, they were entitled to a percentage of the company. Specifically, they wanted 12.5%. The claim was based on one thing: that $3,000 loan they gave me for my car, the one I had repaid in full, in cash over 3 years ago. There was no contract, no paperwork, no record, only my father's word that he had invested in his daughter's future. Now they wanted equity. I sat there staring at the email, mouth open, heart pounding. It wasn't just betrayal. It was greed, wrapped in entitlement, delivered like it was business as usual. My lawyer, Diane, was a former Silicon Valley litigator who now specialized in founders protecting themselves from vultures, usually investors. She read the email and said, "They have no case. This is theater. But let's treat it like war." I nodded. "If we settle," I asked, "do they go away forever?" She tilted her head. "You want to settle? I want them legally out of my life." While she prepared a response, the emails from my parents kept coming. My mom tried guilt. "You wouldn't be where you are without us. We gave you everything." My dad went for pride. "This could be good press if we're seen as a supportive family. Why not let us in?" Kayla tried to play mediator. "I don't think they mean it like this. You know how Dad is. Maybe you can talk." I responded to none of them. Because what was there to say? They didn't believe in me when I had nothing. They laughed at me when I was dreaming. And now that the dream was real, they wanted to own it. We drafted a response. Simple, clear, and final. The money had been repaid, and we had bank receipts to prove it. There was no equity agreement. Any further legal action would be considered harassment. But before we sent it, Diane asked, "Do you want to counteroffer a settlement?" End it with a check and a clause? I thought about it. I didn't owe them a penny. But closure? That was worth something. I told her to offer $5,000. Not because they deserved it, but because I wanted it over. On one condition. They sign a non-disclosure and no contact agreement. No calls, no interviews, no messages. No claim to the brand, story, or revenue. Ever again. They accepted. Of course they did. They were never in it for love. Just leverage. When the papers were signed and the check cleared, I sat on my balcony with a quiet that didn't feel empty. It felt earned. That night, I dug up the old receipt I had written when I first paid them back for the car loan. The crumpled paper I had kept out of instinct. I framed it. Underneath, I added a quote in gold ink. Bet on yourself, even when no one else does. It wasn't revenge. It was reclamation. 3 weeks after settling with my parents, I hosted a dinner party. It wasn't extravagant, just 16 people packed into my loft with borrowed chairs, mismatched candles, and trays of food from my favorite local bistro. These were people who saw me when no one else did. My first developer, a former cafe coworker who helped test the earliest version of the app, my lawyer Diane, of course, Maya, and a few clients who had become friends along the way. No family. No forced smiles. No hollow toasts. Just laughter. And freedom. Midway through dinner, someone raised a glass and said, "To Rachel, for building something no one believed in and making it bigger than any of us imagined." I felt my chest tighten, not with sadness, but with relief. They didn't know how deeply those words cut through years of dismissal. How many nights I sat alone with nothing but mock-ups and doubt, hearing my father's voice echo, "Don't quit your night job." That night, I didn't. I quit the need for their approval. After the party, I started writing again. Not just business blogs or product notes, but essays. Personal ones. About the unspoken weight of being the lesser child. The shame of being unsupported. The power of betting on yourself when you've been counted out. I published one anonymously. Titled it, "The Gift of Being Underestimated." It went viral. People, strangers, messaged me saying, "This is my story." I thought I was the only one. I cried reading this. Every click felt like a hand reaching out from the dark. And I finally felt seen. Then came the podcast invitations, the speaking panels, the pitch requests. I turned down most of them, not because I was afraid, but because I was choosing how I showed up now. Not out of scarcity, not to prove anything, but on my own terms. When I finally did say yes to one, a Women in Tech Summit, I walked onto that stage in a black jumpsuit and sneakers, holding nothing but a clicker and a quiet smile. I told my story, how my parents dismissed the idea of me being anything more than a waitress, how they sued me the minute they saw dollar signs, how success, when born from self-trust, is louder than revenge. When I finished, the room stood up. Not for me, but for everyone who'd ever been told they'd fail. Kayla texted me the next day. "Heard you spoke at that tech thing.
Wow.
You're everywhere now." I ignored it. Then another came 2 days later. "Mom keeps asking if you'll come by sometime. She says she regrets how things went." I stared at the message. Regret wasn't the same as apology. Wanting to talk wasn't the same as listening. I didn't reply. Later that week, I took a photo of myself standing beside a mural that said, "Your silence spoke volumes." So did mine. I didn't post it online. I printed it and framed it above my workspace, right next to the receipt. The summer after the Forbes article, I felt something I hadn't known in years. Stillness. Not boredom. Not loneliness. Just a quiet, steady rhythm that didn't revolve around bracing for rejection. For once, there was no one demanding I prove my worth. No criticism veiled as concern. Just the slow bloom of a life that finally felt mine. Business was good. The app had crossed 250,000 users. A partnership offer from a major freelance platform was in the works. My team had grown to 8 full-time people, including an operations lead who had once called my UI elegantly unfussy. I didn't wake up dreading email. I didn't flinch at unknown numbers. The settlement was behind me, or so I thought. Because silence doesn't always mean absence. Sometimes, silence is the inhale before another round of drama, the calm not after, but before the storm. It started subtly. A cousin messaged me. Aunt Nancy was asking if you'd come to Thanksgiving. She says it'd mean a lot to your dad. Then Maya told me she bumped into Kayla at an event. She said your mom's been depressed. Keeps saying we lost Rachel. Like you're dead or something. I nodded. She said your dad's different too. Quieter. Says he misses his daughter. I raised an eyebrow. Did he say which one? Maya winced. You don't owe them anything. Just thought you should know. I knew. I just didn't care. Until I got the letter. It wasn't formal, no envelope, no lawyer's name, no notarized drama. Just a handwritten note. Folded once, slipped into my office mailbox at the co-working space I used once a week. No return address. Rachel, I know you have no reason to forgive us. I wouldn't if I were you. But we made mistakes. Big ones. We thought we were protecting you from disappointment. We thought Kayla needed more help and you were just already strong. I see now that strength doesn't mean someone doesn't need support. You don't have to respond. I won't contact you again. I just needed you to know I was wrong. We were wrong.
Dad.
I read it 3 times. Each time, the paper felt heavier. This wasn't a demand. Or a defense. It was surrender. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. But I did feel something stir, not forgiveness, but recognition. For the first time, my father had spoken to me, not at me. And that meant something. Not everything, but something. I didn't tell anyone. Not Maya. Not Diane. Not even the barista who always noticed when my mood shifted. I kept the letter tucked into my journal. Just knowing it existed was enough, for now. Because healing doesn't always look like reunion. Sometimes it's just the knowledge that you could speak again if you chose to. And I wasn't ready to choose yet. A month later, I received a speaking invitation from a university, a course called Women in Innovation. The professor was a fan of my app and wanted me to guest lecture on building ethical tech with limited resources. I said yes. When I walked into the lecture hall, I froze for a split second. Because sitting in the front row was Kayla. Hair pulled back. No book in her lap. No camera. No entourage. Just her. She saw me and didn't smile. Didn't wave. Just nodded. I nodded back. And then I delivered my talk. I didn't acknowledge her during Q&A. She didn't ask a question. But when the session ended and students gathered around, she waited. Quietly. Not pushing. When the crowd thinned, she approached.
Hey, she said.
That was really good. Thanks. I read your essays. The anonymous ones. I knew they were yours. Even before you went public. I nodded. She hesitated. Then, I'm sorry for how I talked to you. Back then. Which time? I asked, not unkindly. Her face cracked just a bit. Most of them. We stood in silence. Then she reached into her bag and handed me a small black envelope. I didn't send this earlier. Thought you'd throw it out. But if you want to know, it's there. She turned and walked out. Inside the envelope was a photo of us, me and her, aged 10 and 12, on the swings at a park. And a note. I don't deserve a sister like you. But I hope one day I can earn the right to know you again. No manipulation. No plea. Just a truth. That was the first time in years I let a tear fall for something that wasn't anger. Later that night, I walked to the rooftop of my building and stared out over the city. The lights, the sounds, the skyline. All mine now. Not theirs. Not shared. Not stolen. And yet, I didn't feel alone. I felt open. Not forgiving. But beginning. I didn't reply to Kayla's note. Not because I didn't believe her, but because I did. For the first time in years, she wasn't performing. She wasn't trying to frame the story or sugarcoat her role in it. She just left the door unlocked. Whether or not I walked through it was up to me. That was the most respectful thing she'd ever done for me. Still, I didn't rush. Life was finally quiet in a good way. Freelance Flow had scaled smoothly. My CTO was handling the platform relaunch. I'd stepped back into a creative director role, overseeing vision and culture instead of sprint deadlines. I was doing the work I wanted, not the work I had to prove. People still reached out, founders, students, podcast hosts. They all wanted to know how I'd done it. And sometimes I told them. But more often I talked about why I kept going. Because I was tired of being underestimated. Because I was tired of being dismissed. Because silence had become a language I was fluent in, and I wanted my story to speak louder. One afternoon, while reviewing UI concepts in a quiet cafe, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. Normally, I ignored those.
But something nudged me.
I answered. Hello. Silence. Then, it's Mom. My pulse didn't spike. My stomach didn't twist. That surprised me. She spoke softly. I know I'm not supposed to call. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted to say, thank you. I frowned. For what? For not dragging us through the mud. After the article, after the settlement, you had every chance to tell the world how awful we were. And you didn't. I sat with that. I didn't stay silent for you, I said. I did it for me. I wanted my story to be mine, not about you. I know, she said. And I'm glad it is. More silence. I won't call again, she added. I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you, even if I didn't know how to show it.
Click.
No request to meet. No guilt trip. Just a fragment of something almost human. Later that week, I lit a candle and reread all the notes. My dad's apology, Kayla's photo and letter, now this quiet call. Each of them offered a crack in the wall I'd spent years building. But I didn't tear it down. I planted a garden on top. By winter, the leaves had fallen, but nothing in me felt bare. That year marked the 3rd anniversary of Freelance Flow's official launch. We crossed 500,000 users, signed a strategic partnership with a major invoicing platform, and for the first time, I spoke openly about my personal journey on stage, not just as a business founder, but as a woman who had rebuilt herself from silence. I didn't start by sharing numbers or timelines. I started by saying, I was told I'd never be more than a waitress. And that was the last time I listened to people who didn't believe in me. The room went still. Then it filled with something I hadn't expected, not applause, but exhalation. As if people had been waiting to hear someone say it out loud. That you can come from a family that loves conditionally. That support can be performative. That success doesn't erase wounds, but it does allow you to build a life that doesn't revolve around begging for love. After that speech, people came up to me in tears. Not about business, but about parents who chose other siblings. About being the second best. About growing up in houses where presence didn't equal belonging. I didn't give them advice. I just listened. And it felt like closure. Not because the story was done, but because I wasn't inside it anymore. 2 weeks before Christmas, I received another letter. This one was from Kayla. It wasn't handwritten. It wasn't dramatic. Just a typed page, printed on matte cream stationery.
Hey.
This will be the last letter, I promise. I just wanted you to know, I'm getting married. Quietly. No big party. No RSVP list. Just a city hall ceremony and a dinner after. I'm not asking you to come. I'm not asking you to forgive everything. But I wanted you to know that I chose something different this time. Someone who doesn't compare me to anyone. Who lets me be exactly what I am. And I think watching you walk away helped me realize what that kind of peace looks like. I'm sorry it took me so long. But thank you. For leaving. For becoming who you are. For showing me it was possible. Love.
Kayla.
I read it 3 times. Then I put it away. I didn't feel the need to write back. Because some things don't need a reply. Some stories close on their own. On Christmas morning, I woke up alone in my apartment, made cinnamon rolls, and watched snow collect on the fire escape. I didn't feel sad. I felt still. I had a new tradition, one I chose, not one I inherited. Later, I walked through the quiet streets, thinking about how this all began. A waitress. A dream. A family who couldn't see me until they needed something. A company built from rejection and late nights and stubborn hope. And me still here. Still whole. In January, a journalist followed up from the Forbes piece and asked me, "What would you say to your younger self, the one sketching app ideas on a napkin while your family doubted you?" I smiled. I'd say, don't waste your energy trying to convince people to clap for you. Build something they can't ignore, and then walk away if they still don't clap. She laughed and said, "That's the best quote I've heard in months." I wasn't trying to be clever. I was just telling the truth. These days, my life is quiet. Not because nothing's happening, but because I've stopped inviting chaos to dinner. I choose who gets a seat at my table. And not everyone from the past deserves one. Sometimes I hear updates through Leah, the cousin who still checks in. Your parents finally sold the house. Kayla and her husband opened a bookstore. Your mom volunteers now. Hospice work. Your dad doesn't talk about the lawsuit, but he keeps a photo of you on his desk. I nod. I don't ask for more. Because I'm not looking for a reconciliation story. I'm living a freedom one. The biggest lesson I've learned? Revenge doesn't always come with flames or fireworks. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is move on so completely, so beautifully, that the people who once doubted you are left clapping from a distance, in silence. Not because you need them to, but because they finally realize what they lost. And by then, it's far too late to be invited in.